Meantime, our Prime Minister is in Fort McMurray, Alberta today. Justin Trudeau touring the new Suncor oil sands facility. It comes after pipeline protesters in British Columbia gave Justin Trudeau a very unfriendly welcome on Thursday. Watch this. Well, the Prime Minister is caught between a rock and a hard place. This vocal crowd in Victoria on the island voicing their opposition to the Kinder Morgan pipeline expansion, which goes from Alberta to Burnaby, BC, near Vancouver. They are angry over Trudeau's support of the project. Meantime, in Vancouver, same thing. Protesters gathering outside of a Liberal fundraiser where Justin Trudeau was speaking. The Prime Minister has said time and again, you can have the best of both worlds. You can develop the economy where you can also protect the environment. These protesters disagree completely. Kinder Morgan has become a flashpoint in BC. Let's bring in Michael Gagan, who is standing by. He's joining us today from Victoria, political analyst there. Michael, a lot of anger in your province over this pipeline project and the Prime Minister getting it front and center.
Well, yeah, it is a very vocal, upset, angry minority of British Columbians who are strongly opposed. The fact is that there's an equal number of British Columbians who are strongly supportive. And if you combine them with the people who are somewhat positive, it's actually a very clear majority that support the Kinder Morgan expansion. And for Trudeau, he's looking at where the polling numbers are, and he's not losing out to the NDP and Greens federally. He's losing out to the Conservatives. He's looking at an Alberta where Jason Kenney is almost certainly going to be the next premier. He's seeing where the public is headed. And it's not a stampede towards the left. If anything, it's a shift to the right. So he has to temper what he's seeing with the protests with what he's seeing in the polling results.
You raise a great point, which is that this is a vocal minority. And, you know, people who are in support of these energy projects are perhaps less likely, Michael, to go out on the street and protest in favor of pipelines. So we want to be clear about that. The Prime Minister is in some pretty challenging territory in Alberta today, in Fort McMurray, which is an oil town, of course, in a major way. And the Trudeau name has always had challenges in Alberta. How do you sort of circle the square if you're Trudeau? As I said off the top, I mean, it's a bit of a no-win situation. How do you keep the energy sector happy and environmentalists happy?
Well, first of all, yeah, he is caught between a rock and a hard place. And I think what he's trying to do is, first of all, he's going to Fort St. John. He's meeting with the people whose livelihoods depend on the oil and gas sector. And he's saying, look, I'm with you. You know, I canceled the Northern Gateway pipeline. I've imposed a federal carbon tax. We also have a provincial carbon tax in British Columbia, which is going up. But he's saying, look, I stand behind this pipeline expansion. And then to the majority of British Columbians who are either somewhat positive or somewhat undecided, he's saying to them, look, we're going to make sure we have really cutting edge technology and procedures in place to help virtually eliminate the chance of a significant spill. But against all this backdrop is the reality that, we have half a dozen refineries just south of the border. We have tankers coming in and out. So the amount of increased tanker flow from this one pipeline project is negligible compared to what we already have going on in the West Coast. So it's a somewhat of an argument in terms of theater and rhetoric, which isn't really rooted that much in terms of actual fact.
We're going to show our viewers some images of the Prime Minister touring this facility in Fort McMurray, this Suncor oil facility. There he is in a hard hat, protective glasses there, as they're explaining to him exactly what is done at this facility as well. It strikes me, Michael, that for Justin Trudeau, a lot of these protesters feel he betrayed them by saying that he was an environmentalist, and yet he green-lighted some of these projects that were controversial. On the other hand, as you know, for Alberta and to a certain extent for BC as well, when it comes to the economy, they need to get that oil to market. And some people, of course, are well aware of the importance of doing that, I guess. So which way does this play out, do you think, for the Prime Minister?
Well, I think in terms of the health of our Confederation, he has to be able to ensure that Alberta can supply its oil to more than one market, that they aren't just dependent on shipping it south to the United States. And that's why there's even been some allegations that some of these environmental protests have been funded in part by those who want to see Alberta in that situation where it's essentially they can only export to the United States. And I think for Trudeau, they come at politics with that quid pro quo attitude, which is, hey, I canceled the Northern Gateway. Don't I get any kind of a slack because of that? And for these protesters, no. When you cancel the Northern Gateway, it's only whetting their appetite. It's like, we stop one pipeline, we can stop them all. And so, it doesn't make people more moderate; it makes them more extreme. And I think that's one thing that they're learning federally and provincially. We've seen the BC government have this issue with Alberta over the same pipeline. But at the same time, John Horgan, our NDP premier, is getting beaten up by environmentalists over wanting to, expand the LNG industry and provide some tax incentives to do so. And again, he's not earning any points for opposing the Kinder Morgan pipeline. They just want it all stopped. They want everything in the oil and gas sector stopped. It would bankrupt Canada overnight. We couldn't afford our healthcare and education systems, but that doesn't matter. They are absolutists, and they want absolutely everything canceled. And that's what both the federal and provincial governments are up against. That having been said, we've seen some very progressive and positive policies out of both British Columbia and Alberta and federally in terms of, reducing carbon emissions and stricter environmental practices and whatnot. So progress is being made. The trick is to do it in such a way that, you don't crash the Canadian economy and the value of the Canadian dollar.
Michael Gagan, political analyst, joining us from Victoria as the Prime Minister continues to tour the facility in Fort Mac, Alberta. Thanks for this, Michael. Talk to you soon.
You're welcome. Take care.